Welcome back. This is the incredible true story of Edward Joseph Reed, who was born January 18th, 1925, a World War II veteran and a hero and my personal role model. He was my stepdad and an amazing man. He passed away July 26, 2014. He will always be greatly missed. He received the Aztec Pacific Award and 2 Bronze Stars, and a couple more. We're going to watch an interview and a speech he did. Plus, I'm going to mention some stories he didn't say in the interview. But he was a great stepdad. He spent time with me. He got to spend time with my kids before he passed away. We recently went to go visit his graveyard. And he was, I remember going to the racetracks with him and a lot of stories that he mentioned back in the day, which we're going to get into during the interview because he didn't mention them. But I'm going to get a little bit more detailed about the stuff he didn't mention. Let's get into the video, and thanks for watching, you guys.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Veterans History Project, Santa Clarita Valley Edition. The Veterans History Project is an initiative of the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. The Santa Clarita Valley Edition is spearheaded by College of the Canyons in association with the Santa Clarita Valley Senior Center, SCVTV, and Vets Back to War Zone. The project relies on volunteers to collect the oral histories of U.S. military veterans and support personnel who served in active war zones. Today is November 30th, 2009. My name is Christine Bitter, and my guest today is Edward Reef, a veteran of World War II. Hi, Ed. Thank you for being here today.
It's been nice to see a pretty face.
Wonderful. Well, tell me a little bit about where your military experience started. What town were you born in? Did you enlist?
I enlisted. I was 17 years old, January the 18th, and February 12th, I joined the Marine Corps. And I went through boot camp at Parris Island, and that was a hellhole.
Oh, what do you mean?
But it makes a man out of you.
In what ways?
Oh, they train you, they beat into you, kill.
Really? Tell me a little bit about your drills and what daily life was during your boot camp experience.
Oh, my drills were all pretty rough. You had to do 50 push-ups. You had to go on hikes every day. There was marching. There was a rifle range, there was a bayonet range, there was a pistol range,
Okay.
And they really go to work on you, and they turn you into a man.
Mm-hmm.
And the boys that didn't make it, they just get rid of them, they leave them.
Were you already assigned to a particular duty or specialty, or?
No, not in boot camp.
Okay. Tell me about that process afterwards.
Well, afterwards, I applied for sheet metal school, and they gave me a test which I passed, and they flew me to Quantico, Virginia, and I was waiting for the school to start, and I had a pass to go to New York, and I was waiting for my buddy to change his clothes, and this Marine major walked in, and he said, you and you, pack your sea bags. And I told him, sir, I've got a pass. I'm going to New York. Mm-hmm. He took the pass out of my hand, tore it up, and said, you heard what I said. I packed my sea bag. They flew me back to San Diego to the Marine base. And from there, they sent me to North Island. And I spent 6 weeks at North Island on machine guns. And from North Island, I boarded a ship, and we took off, and August 7th, 1942, we hit Guadalcanal. D-Day, our first offensive.
Guadalcanal, man.
Had you heard anything about what was going on there before you left? Did you have any idea what was...
I had no idea where we were going, what we were going to do. We went overseas on the Laura line, and we got to New Caledonia, and they transferred us to these Dutch ships, which were absolutely horrible, filthy.
Tell me a little bit about your first days.
Well, the first day we landed, they had laid down a 6-hour barrage, and when we got to the beachhead, it was just like landing in Santa Monica, nothing. We were figuring, my God, the shelling and the bombings must have done them all in.
Okay.
I thought they were on
And
vacation.
at 1 o'clock in the morning,
Beautiful.
it hit the fan. The Japanese soldiers came out of everywhere. The jungle, pillboxes, they were up in trees, sniping, shooting at us. And our orders were to take Henderson Field, no matter what the cost.
Where was Henderson Field located?
It was
where
about
you
a
landed?
mile and a half, 2 miles from the beach.
Did you march into Henderson Field the first
We
night? Or?
didn't march in nowhere. We fought our way in,
Okay.
and it took us 3 days.
Goodness.
And
wow.
we finally got to Henderson Field, and I was transferred to the 1st Marine Air Wing forward echelon for airdrome defense. We
Okay.
set our machine guns up around the whole field, and our job was to protect the field and take care of the CBs.
So your first experience with your duty of killing the enemy was that night at 1 a.m. is
That's
that-
right.
How did you feel that first night after you performed those duties?
It's pretty hard to describe. I must have lined up 100 Japanese soldiers, and I couldn't pull the trigger.
Okay.
What a humble man.
And finally, when I saw what they were doing to our boys, they were butchering them. I finally got the first shot off, and after that, it came easy.
Okay. Wow. Or what types of weapons did you carry?
We carried the Springfield 03, which was a rifle that had a 5 clip, and the Japanese used to count to 5 and then charge.
Okay.
And we came up against the Imperial Marines, the Japanese crack troops, and they were monsters, 6-footers. I don't know if they were on something, but they would charge you, and you could fire all 5 bullets, hit them right across the chest, and it would slow them down but not stop them. So they finally
Like
took
Scarface.
the 03 away from us and issued us the Rising gun, which was about that big and had a folding stock. It carried a 15-clip ammunition deal, and it was 45 caliber. It was like having a Thompson submachine gun.
Oh, wow.
And the only thing, you couldn't drag it through the mud like it could the 03.
Okay.
You had to keep it clean, or it would foul up. And that weapon, to us, turned the tide of the fighting. The Japanese would count 5, get up and charge, and we'd have an extra 10 bullets there. And the 45 caliber bullet would stop a horse.
Oh, wow.
And it made the big difference when we came up against the Imperial Marines. It was their crack troops, and we beat them in the first fight.
What happened after that?
After that, it was just a matter of survival. It's either them or us. And when you see your friends and the close ones getting butchered and killed, you become a butcher.
Did you have any idea what the conflict was about? Did they give you any indication of...
None at all. None at
reasons
all.
were?
I knew that the Japanese had attacked us. I knew what they did was absolutely uncalled for and backstabbing. And I enlisted to get even. When I was 15, I belonged to the New York Naval Cadets, and I was a lieutenant in the Marine Detachment, and that's what got me started. I was also a pretty tough New York kid.
Okay, draw from some of those resources to get you through, I bet.
It wasn't easy to start with, But after the first 2 weeks, we became as cruel as the Japanese.
What cruelties are you referring to in terms of the
Oh,
Japanese? What did you
they
see?
did atrocious things you wouldn't want to know.
So some of the atrocious things they would do is they would cut off your huevos and put it in your mouth, or they'll cut your head off and put your head on the huevos. They did some crazy stuff, like really just beyond explanation. And I think that's why Eddie didn't say that in this interview. But I remember he would tell me some crazy stories.
I wouldn't even be able to explain it to you. But believe me, they were horrible fighters.
Did you have any indication of why they chose those methods?
None at all. I don't know if it came easy to them. I don't know what it was. But they were fierce fighters. And in hand-to-hand combat, it was not easy.
How close did you get to soldiers? How often were you involved in actual hand-to-hand combat?
Oh, maybe 3 or 4 times.
Tell me about those times, or one in particular that
You don't
remember.
even want to know. You're out on patrol, a Japanese group jump you, and you get to fighting close in, hand to hand, and all you think about is survival. We carried a pistol and 2 knives. We carried a stiletto for throwing and a regular hunting knife. And if we were in close enough, we were pretty good at using them.
Okay. Well, so you were given training on knives
Oh, yes.
as well as guns.
In boot camp, we were given training. All they drilled into your head was live and kill, live and kill.
Tell me a little bit about the friends you made. Did you make them immediately as soon as you arrived, or before that?
I had 2 buddies. One was from Shreveport, Louisiana, and the other one was from Roanoke, Virginia. Johnny Cochran and Edwin Dupre. And we were known as the Unholy Three.
Really? Now, how did you get that moniker?
We did sing. We did.
They're called the Unholy Three because he was a sergeant of 25, and only 3 of his unit came back, which was Eddie and the 2 he mentioned, which is very incredible because 25 originally went into this war, and Eddie and his 2 friends made it back alive.
Some rough things, including stealing a case of liquor from one of the generals during an air raid.
Oh, really? Well, it sounds like y'all needed it with what you were dealing with.
Well, we buried it in the jungle and we're afraid to go near it for 2 months.
I bet. Did you end up finding it?
Oh, yes, we found it. We celebrated with it.
Excellent.
Shared it with a slew of Marines. Even a couple of Navy and Army boys. But it was nice. And then we finished with the canal, and we were the first troops to get to Auckland, New Zealand.
Friends you made. Did you make them immediately as soon as you arrived, or before that?
I had 2 buddies. One was from Shreveport, Louisiana, and the other one was from Roanoke, Virginia. Johnny Cochran and Edwin Dupre. And we were known as the Unholy Three.
Really? Now, how did you get that moniker?
We did sing. We did some rough things, including stealing a case of liquor from one of the generals during an air raid.
Oh, really? Well, it sounds like y'all needed it with what you were dealing with.
Well, we buried it in the jungle and we're afraid to go near it for 2 months.
I bet. Did you end up finding it?
Oh, yes, we found it. We celebrated with it.
Excellent.
Shared it with a slew of Marines. Even a couple of Navy and Army boys.
Sharing is caring.
It was nice. And then we finished with the canal, and we were the first troops to get to Auckland, New Zealand. And they treated us royally.
They were
I spent 6 weeks there and had a blast.
They were your advocates there.
Yes, they treated us like we were gods.
Did they also help with? Did they offer any help during your battles there? During your combat there?
No, not really. We never came across the soldiers. We just came across the women.
Okay. Tell me about that. How long were you there?
6 weeks.
Okay. What did you do for fun?
Drank and had a ball.
Okay.
I was pretty close to my major because I'd saved his life in the canal. And he told me, Ed, he says, go out and have a ball. He says, party, do whatever you want. We're not going home. He says, but that's between you and me. And
so you lived it up
that's exactly what I did. We rented a suite of rooms in the Auckland Hotel. I took Johnny and Dupre in with me because I had gotten lucky on the ship gambling and I won a lot of money.
Excellent.
And we went to McDuff's department store and I spent $1,000 on jewelry for my family and for Johnny and Dupre's family. And we paid $100 a day for liquor. And we had 6 weeks there that if I had to do over again, those would pick the 6 weeks I would take.
Excellent.
But when we left, the women there carried on and cried. At our sergeant party the night before we were leaving, it was rough.
They probably knew a little bit about what you were going back to.
Yeah, it was rough. Okay. There we landed on Bougainville after that. And that was another rough island. Bougainville had a volcano, and the Japanese kept bombing it. And the island itself wasn't but maybe 4 or 5 miles. And finally, Christmas, the volcano erupted. The island was shaken.
Imagine that, on Christmas, the island erupted. He witnessed people with their legs melt off and many crazy things of people getting killed through this lava. Right now you're going to see that he's not going to say all those details.
Just like that. And I can say that's the first time in the Pacific that I was scared.
Was the volcano and not all of the guns
I
and
was
violence
scared. That hot lava running down, the Marines running into the ocean, afraid the island was going to sink. And it was a bad, nasty time.
Amazing. Did you feel like you were facing the end of the world or something?
I didn't know what I was facing. All I knew is stay alive, stay alive. And I didn't run into the ocean. I just held my ground and watched for the flowing lava. And when it was coming anywhere close, I was sure I was away from it. But we survived it.
What neighbor?
You see how he survived that? He saw a lot of people get burnt. A lot of crazy stuff on that island. And he's not saying it because he gets graphic. When he would get home, first thing he would do is get his cigar and his cup of whiskey and sit in front of the TV and watch his Western shows. And whenever I sat down, he would tell us some of these crazy stories.
What neighborhood did you grow up in New York?
The Bronx. It was a rough neighborhood. And I was a tough kid.
You don't look like such a tough kid there. You look like you're smiling a little bit there.
I know
well, maybe there's a little wiliness over here.
I'll tell you, the one thing I did come across in the Marine Corps, I myself am Jewish, and there was a big bias.
Yeah, he was Jewish, and he actually wanted to go fight Hitler. He actually told me this. The real reason he enlisted is because he wanted to go to Germany and fight Hitler. And he had to earn up his ranks in order to become sergeant.
Okay.
I was in with Texans and Southerners, and they thought I had horns.
Really?
And I got knocked down quite a bit, but I did a lot of knocking my own. And when the men finally realized I became a squad leader, and the men in my squad, when they realized the kind of man I was, or boy I was, they would have followed me into hell.
He actually fought the sergeant before he became sergeant in a boxing match, and his eye socket fell off, and he had to go to the ER to get his eye put back in place. True story.
They left you alone after that. That's
And
improving
from
to you,
then
it sounds
on,
like.
I had no problems.
Just based
None
on your
at all.
background. Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your medals here.
My what?
Your medals here. Which one? What is this one? This is.
I have no idea. The only one I really know about is the Asiatic Pacific,
Okay.
and that's the medal I got with 2 bronze stars for the other islands.
2 bronze stars and the ADAC medal. Like, those are really, really medals that people get when they do heroic things.
Okay.
There's the discharge pin, and that one there, I don't even know what that pin is for. I never really was a medal man.
You have
I
several.
was interested in getting out of the Marine Corps, which I did. I never applied for them. And when my grandchildren and my daughters got hot and heavy on it, they were the ones that wrote to the Corps. And after 8 months, they were sent the medals. And I never really knew what I had accomplished. I knew I had 2 presidential citations.
You see, the president wanted to see Eddie for what he did, but he was so humble that he didn't go. And all he wanted to do was live a normal life after everything he did.
Okay.
And I knew I had the Asiatic Pacific with bronze stars. But that's all I knew. I didn't know about any of the others, and I wasn't really interested. I was interested in getting out of the Corps and going on with my life. And
Well, you
I
were there
spent-
when the Japanese beat their last retreat, correct? In December.
Yes. We had pushed them back to the end of the island, and rather than surrender, they were jumping off of mountains and committing suicide.
Okay. Now, which island was this again? I'm sorry.
Guadalcanal.
Okay. That's you had gone back for the second salvo,
Yes.
and you were there. Right. Okay. Tell me a little bit more about that day. Was there any heavy fighting that day? When did the fighting stop?
No, we fought right up to the end. They fought back. We kept coming on and pushing them back and pushing them back. And it became less and less on their part, more and more on our part. And unfortunately, our orders would take no prisoners. Because of the cruelty and the things that the Japanese pulled on our boys, our orders came down, take no prisoners. And I guess they knew it.
Now, in terms of your friends, and we had talked about seeing your friends pass. What types of, tell me of those situations where you had seen a friend that was killed, and tell me how you dealt with that loss at the time.
You really don't have time to deal with it. You see it happen, it stabs you in the heart, but you're still interested in staying alive yourself. And I've had close friends, and it does tear you up. It tears you up pretty good. But like I say, my 2 best friends, Johnny and Dupre, thank God the 3 of us were spared. And
Out of a troop of 25, only 3 came back alive, which Ed was the sergeant and his 2 best friends. That's why they're called the Unholy 3, because they survived the aftermath.
unfortunately, Dupre re-enlisted. And they made him a master sergeant, and I begged him. I says, Dupey, we were lucky enough to get through 5 islands. Don't push your luck. And he said to me, Ed, he says, they're offering me Master Sergeant. He says, I'll be stationed at the Presidio in San Francisco. He says, I'll have it made. I says, well, I can't talk you out of it. And he went up, re-enlisted. They made him his Master Sergeant, and he was at the Presidio. And then the war broke out. And he came in. The last weekend he was in town, they were shipping out, and we were sitting together drinking. He started. He started to cry. And he said to me, Ed, he says, I don't feel the same. He said, when I had you and Johnny, I knew you were going to look out for me. He says, I don't feel the same. And I says to him, Doopy, I says, you're too ornery to get hurt. Don't ever even think that way. And he left. And a month later, I went to my dentist, who was an ex-Marine, and he had the Leatherneck magazine there. And I picked it up, and on the last page, it had killed and missing in action. First name on the list was Master Sergeant Edwin Dupre, killed at the Inchon Reservoir. I just went to pieces. I went out on a 5-day drunk, sobered up, got on a plane and flew back to Shreveport to visit his folks, who I was pretty close to. My other buddy, Johnny, became an FBI agent. And after losing Dupre, it was just like losing a brother, because we were close.
How do you feel about your service now when you look back on it?
I try not to look back on it. When I came back from overseas, I spent 6 weeks with a shrink who was supposed to de-war me, I guess. And when he finished with me, I was stationed at Goleta, the air base in Santa Barbara. I was sergeant of the guard there. And I was there the last year of the war. And when the war ended and they were celebrating, I was told, don't put up with anything, don't let them get out of hand. I think we got drunker than the boys celebrated. Oh, God. But my major called me in, and he said to me, Ed, he says, you got 3 choices. He says, 1, he says, I will recommend you for Sergeant Major School. He says, 2, you can re-enlist and try for officers training. Or 3, I'll put you on a plane, and you'll get down to San Diego and be a civilian.
Which one you think he chose after going through 5 islands, doing heroic things that impacted our history? He should be in the history books. They should make a movie about him. But after all of that, you know, I would also want to be a civilian.
And I said to him, Major, it's nice knowing you. And I couldn't get on the plane quick enough. I was with the 1st Marines that were discharged. I had enough points, double of what it took to get out. Okay. And I was top man on the base. And when we got to San Diego, to the Marine base for our discharge, everything was fouled up. And we were sitting there for days. And one day this PFC comes in with brooms and shovels, and he's handing it to all of us veterans and telling us, you got to go out and clean up the area. And I looked at him, I says, I don't want to tell you where to stick that broom.
I bet.
I says, but if you don't get out of here, you won't be able to walk out. And that night, I called Walter Winchell in New York, and I got through to him. And I told him what was happening. I says, we're veterans, we're all sergeants, senior sergeants, we're all waiting for a discharge, and they're giving us all kinds of crap. He said to me, Ed, he says, don't worry about it. And I don't know what happened from then, but boy, the next day, the whole situation changed and we were out in 24 hours.
Excellent. Good for you.
Yep.
I understand that you've
That is what you call power. That is what you call juice. He made one phone call and he got him out of there.
mentored veterans coming back from the Middle East. Tell me a little bit about that.
I went down to Camp Pendleton a number of times, and the boys there looked upon me as a hero. And I'd sit with them and talk to them, and I would tell them, World War II, we knew who we were fighting. I says, you poor guys are up against it. You don't know who to fire on. You can't fire on anyone unless they shoot at you. I says, don't ever call me a hero. You are the heroes. You poor kids have been through it. You're home, and God bless all of you.
What a humble person.
And I am lucky enough to go and be invited to the Marine Corps balls every year, and I'm one of the guests of honors.
Oh, wonderful. For this year?
Yeah.
Is that in the future? Or?
No, it just passed.
It just passed. How was that?
It was excellent.
I heard those are a lot of fun. I'd like to go
Oh,
to
they
one
are.
sometime.
They are.
With the military in my family, you'd think I'd have made it to one by now, but I haven't.
As a matter of fact, the general that was in charge spent the whole hour sitting with me at my table. And he told me, he says, I got the rank, he says, but you're one of the heroes.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So I'm told that there's a poem that you had recited. Tell me about that.
Oh, it's quite a poem. Our original drill instructor was a China Marine, and he was rough and all Marine. And if we didn't learn the poem, we didn't get out of boot camp. And here it is. You can have your Army khaki, you can have your Navy blue. There's still another fighter I will introduce to you. His uniform is different, the best you've ever seen. The Huns called him a devil dog, but his real name is Marine. He is trained in Paris Island, the land that God forgot, where the sand is 14 inches deep and the sun is scorching hot. He has peeled 1,000,000 onions and twice as many spuds. He spends his leisure time in washing out his duds. Now, girls, just take a tip. I'm giving it to you. Just grab yourself a good Marine, for there's nothing he can't do. And when he goes to heaven, to St. Peter he will tell, another Marine reporting, sir, I've served my time in hell.
Well, Ed, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experiences. We really appreciate it.
I enjoyed being here. I really don't like to talk about it. I never have. I never said a word to my children or grandchildren. But eventually I am.
His story will continue because he did tell me, and I've told my kids, and I want this story to continue. I wish a movie could be made about him and the amazing actions he did that helped us in World War II and the impact he had on our history.
Imagine it has to come out.
If you were talking to someone about enlisting today, maybe a young person who wanted to enlist, what would you tell them about enlisting, about being a member of the military and fighting for our country?
Well, when I was a member of the military, you were very proud. The kids of today aren't the same group or type. that I associated with. But I would tell them it's a great place to become a man. They will eventually change your life around.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Similar things. But I'll tell you what Ed did, and he didn't know what he was doing back then. He was adding to our legacy in the Marine Corps. And that's what you guys are doing right now. You guys continue to add to our legacy, and I'm proud to be a Marine. So all of you Marines here that stood up in a time of war, maybe you didn't go yet, maybe you have gone a few times. And because of that, you guys are adding to our legacy. And 50 years from now, Marines in 50 years are going to be looking at you guys, like you guys are looking at Ed. Amazed at what you guys have done. And I'm so proud, and I'm so humble. So without further ado, Mr. Ed Reef, I'm going to bring the microphone down to you, sir.
He wants to be up there.
Well, first of all, I had a 20-page speech that I was going to read, but I took it and tore it up and figured I'll just talk to my fellow buddies right from the heart. On December 7th, 1941, I was at Madison Square Garden at a hockey game, and they made the announcement, all servicemen report back to their bases immediately. All furloughs and leaves have been canceled. That's all they told us. 30 minutes later, they came on the horn again, and they said the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. I was 16 at the time, and I knew my 17th birthday was coming up, and I knew when I was 17 I was going to be in the Marine Corps. I went down on my birthday with my parents who signed for me. I joined. They shipped me to Paris Island, and it was a hellhole. Anyway, thank God I made it through, and I was waiting to go to school. I was going to take up welding. So they flew me to Quantico, Virginia, and I was waiting for school to start. I had a 3-week wait, and I got a pass to go to New York. And I was standing there in my uniform, dressed, waiting for a friend of mine who was going with me, when this major walked in and said, you, and you, pack your sea bags. I said, sir, I've got a pass for New York. He took it out of my hand and tore it up. They put us on the plane. They flew us out here to California, to Pendleton. They shipped me to North Island, and I had 6 weeks training on the machine guns. And they put me on the Lura line, and off we took. We got to New Caledonia, and they transferred us to miserable, filthy Dutch landing ships. We hit Guadalcanal on the 7th of August at 6:30 in the morning. I was the 106th man over the side to go down the boat. They took the first 200 Marines that were going to land and formed a club that we were supposed to meet. Unfortunately, I was the only one of the 200 to make it back. Anyway, we hit the canal. Nothing. It was like landing in Santa Monica. We were playing ball, we were laughing, we were joking. We figured the big Navy barrage had wiped everything out. Then at 11 o'clock that night, it hit the fan. They came out of everywhere, trees, the ground. And we were the first outfit to get the Japanese Imperial Marines, their crack troops. And I would like to apologize for the language, but we kicked their ass. We took Henderson Field, set up our machine guns, and for the next 4 months, we stood there and fought everything off. Anyway, we finally had the island pretty secure, and our outfit was sent to Bougainville. We landed on Bougainville November 1st, 42. And fortunately, it was not as bad as the canal. We cleaned it up in 15 days. Anyway, we had turned Guadalcanal over to the Army. And as you know, they're not Marines. They almost lost the island. They flew us back down, and we got back to Henderson Field, and thank God we repelled their landings. Anyway, the nice part of the story, it was Thanksgiving Day. And on the canal, we had 5 days in the front and 2 days R&R, which was the rear area unloading ships. And my time was up, and I was getting ready to go back to the front. And I passed our CB camp, and they were all lined up. And I asked them, fellas, what's going on? They said, we're having a turkey dinner with all the fillings to go with it. So I said to them, is there any chance of the poor sergeant that's going back to the front to get a meal? They said, you wait here. They brought the officer of the day out, and he took me in, sat me down, and they fed me like you wouldn't believe.
Yep.
I got up to thank him, and he says to me, Sergeant, can you drive a 6x6? I said, surely. He says, come with me. He took me out to the back of their camp, and they had a truck loaded to the hill with turkey and everything else. He says, you take this up to the front lines and give it to our boys from their CB buddies. I thanked them. I drove up to the front. We set out a perimeter of guards. The guys carried me out of the truck, and we had a Thanksgiving second to none. And every year at Thanksgiving, I stop and propose a toast to the boys that didn't make it back.
Give them a toast.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but when I was in boot camp, I had a Marine Corps sergeant, a China Marine. He was all Marine. And he said, if you boys don't learn this poem, you do not get out of boot camp. Now this was 1942, and I've never forgot it. I'm going to give you all a chance to hear it. You can have your Army khaki, you can have your Navy blue. There's still another fighter I will introduce to you. His uniform is different, the best you've ever seen. The Huns called him a devil dog, but his real name is Marine. He is trained in Paris Island, the land that God forgot, where the sand is 14 inches deep and the sun is scorching hot. He has peeled 1 million onions and twice as many spuds. He spends his leisure time in washing out his duds. Now girls, just take a tip. I'm giving it to you. Just grab yourself a good Marine, for there's nothing he can't do. And when he goes to heaven, to St. Peter he will tell, another Marine reporting, sir, I've served my time in hell. Semper Fi everywhere.
We heard you like some scotch and some cigars, and I heard the battalion commander's going to buy some scotch later. But we got you a little cigar box with the golf company crest here. We're the gunfighters, and we hope you store your cigars there.
I will definitely.
Thank you so much, sir.